Okay, a little funny for me to introduce somebody from Tel Aviv University, right? But Sharon Toker, and you're in the healthcare management, correct?
Actually in the business school, but I'm
school.
running the healthcare management program.
There. Yes, there you have it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So, how many of you are researchers? How many of you are employed? Sort of. How many of you were employed and worked too fast, too much? I guess many of you. So, let's start. So, I have a confession to make. So, my name is Sharon Toker. I'm a professor at the Coller School of Management, and I just can't slow down. Really, like this is my workstation in Tel Aviv University. So when I got my tenure, I asked myself, or I told myself, oh no, does it mean I have to like sit in front of my screen for the entire next 20, 30 years and just write papers? Of course, I stand while I lecture, but it sounded really crazy to me. So I've looked for a standing desk, which wasn't available at the time, so I built something, and then actually turned into a treadmill desk. And it's not like I'm walking all day, and it's actually in a very slow pace, like 1.6 kilometers per hour. That's the pace I need to be able to type. But I really rarely slow down. And I occasionally sit. So I was able to find this position, but I often fantasize about really slowing down, like really. And in fact, I'm currently on a sabbatical, which I took because I felt slowing down is a necessity. But as I told you during the time that we've worked here, I've presented in 3 different conferences only this week. So that's a problem, and that's how my calendar looked, like my sabbatical calendar, and that's a problem, as you can probably imagine. And I actually had marvelous plans for this sabbatical, which I anticipated about a year and a half ago. I told everybody I would work in a greenery and plant flowers in pots. Really, that's what was I imagining. However, if you look at my calendar, it is obvious that there's no indication of any plant-based work there currently. So I'm exaggerating a bit, but only a bit, because it is really difficult to slow down at work or really, you know, stop working, even if you have a sabbatical. So why do I and so many others find it really difficult to slow down? After all, we know what we're supposed to do, but what we find in research is that when you plan your sabbatical or you plan to take a leave, we often pack our schedule even tighter. So why does it happen? So for starters, slowing down is getting harder and harder in our culture. And why? Because our society worships busyness. It has become this medal of honor. If you're busy, then you're worth something. And I do not suggest that everybody can slow down, because many people can't. I mean, there are these financial obligations, there's job security, we're expected to work fast. But for many of us, it's not that. It's that keeping busy is kind of a source of pride. It's I can do it all mentality, and that's a problem. So while slowing down may spark feelings of inadequacy and shame, we find it really difficult to stop. Now, it's not only that. If we look at the psychology of productivity, there are many theories that suggest that we draw this feeling of sense of accomplishment or validation from being productive and from being fast. Even oftentimes, if you slow down, you feel like you don't belong anymore, or you're not worth it. So in a sense, being busy and even being stressed about it, and I'm a stress researcher, it's like our existence is somehow justified, and that's a problem. And I do want to say that this does not mean that an inability to slow down means we're workaholics. So how do we define workaholism? Workaholism is when you feel obliged to work all the time, but you hate it. So you feel this need to work, but you can't stop, and you hate this feeling. while many of us can't slow down, but it's not like we hate our work. But we do know that slowing down may spark unpleasant emotions such as boredom, loneliness, and guilt, and ramping up our activities and tasks is simply another way to avoid sitting with those uncomfortable thoughts. And all of this, and these are other researchers that say that all of these external doing and busyness could be a way of trying to build some external structure to counteract the internal emptiness, but it never quite seems to fill this void. Okay, so there's not only that, but it's that we are taught since childhood that we should meet deadlines. You know, as children, we have tests, there are specific exams, there are deadlines, and when you're taking the test, there's a time limitation, right? So you're told you have to work really fast. And it is also difficult to slow down at work because we are constantly compared to others, right? Other researchers, other dancers, other players, other employees. And that's really important. So social comparison theory suggests that individuals compare themselves to others to evaluate their own abilities and worth. And in the context of work, employees may feel pressure to keep up with their peers or outperform them. And this leads to a fast-paced work and, again, increased stress. And of course, there are the cultural norms that prioritize long work hours and fast-paced work. That's also a problem, this hustle culture that we live in. And technology also contributes to the expectations that will be 24/7 connected and productive, and again, creating pressure. So, for example, a diary study, which I haven't conducted this study, but an interesting diary study that followed 124 employees for 5 days, found that time pressure, namely when you have to work really fast to accomplish your goals, led to appraisal of the task as more challenging, and people reported that they actually learned more, and even when they were tested, they actually learned more. So this is kind of a very effective compensation mechanism that inhibits our willingness to slow down at work. And I would add that work is actually really challenging. So I've looked at data from 2023 right now, and on average, an average employee sends or receives about 160 emails per day. Now, if I have to add, and actually that's a number I know, so when you look at my inbox. So if I have to even answer only 40 emails a day, and I'll take my time and do it really slowly, that's it, like the end of the day. So we are really expected to work really fast all the time. That's a problem that's not in our mind. Now, it's not only that. Question, what is it? Do you know this gadget?
It's like when you put a mouse on it with an opposite
Right.
eye, it kind of moves it so it looks like you're by the computer. While you're
Perfect. So it's called a mouse Jiggler, if you haven't known it. So employees who work at home are expected to work, and their employer doesn't believe there's this productivity theater, that's the term, and they don't believe, so they have this software that tracks their mouse movement. So they invented the mouse Jiggler that moves your mouse for you and pretends you're working really fast. Okay, you can even set the pace. Now, another reason it's really, really hard for us to slow down is because of the rapid advancement of technology. And we're going to have now a lecture. The next session is about AI. So I haven't told you, but I'm also an illustrator. That's why you're seeing all these great sloths. But I haven't illustrated this sloth because for me, illustrating a sloth, and although I can do it, like I'm really a professional illustrator, not this one, but even the previous one, it may take time, okay? It may take me like 2 or 3 hours to reach this specific sloth. With AI, it takes me about, I don't know, milliseconds? Or, okay, let's take the time it takes me to write the prompt. So that's a problem. And furthermore, as someone who embraces new technology, and I'm really always curious about these things, I'm trying to learn how to use AI, but learning process is really never ending. So every day there are new features, new instructions that I should keep up with. So it's not like I know how to use AI. I know how to use AI today, not tomorrow, okay? That's a problem. And in a sense, it's if I snooze, I lose, and that's what happens in many places. So trying to keep up is really exhausting. And as I said, I'm a stress researcher. I'm studying stress and health. And studies show that people try various ways to cope with these demands. So they either take stimulants or they consume too many cups of coffee. And what studies show is that it creates this vicious cycle where you're working really fast, but then you're so exhausted, so tired that it actually slows you down and your vigilance slow, and you're getting even slower. And it only, this was the study I was talking about, and it only gets worse because of Generation Z, and they actually work faster. It's not better, it's not more quality, but they tend to be over-energized and excited when they start something. It actually deteriorates with time, and they often work too fast and do everything in this hustle and bustle. Not everyone, but generally speaking. They are also very quick learners, so again, the pace is really fast. But in fact, in a Deloitte report, a recent Deloitte report, they show that they are much more stressed than millennials. And in addition, their pace of leaving their job, just leaving it, even if they do not have other job options, is often really, really high compared to millennials. So they work hard, they live hard. Okay, what do we do there? Again, as a stress researcher, I can testify that this is really problematic. So for example, our recent paper on perception of subjective workload, when I sense I have to work too much and I don't have enough time. We've seen that in Israel over a few years of follow-up, it leads to a cardiovascular risk. And also we've shown in other studies that there's an association between working too fast or working too much and diabetes, depression, health problems, and other things. So it does intensify our burnout and depressive symptoms. So this was quite depressing thus far, I know. So in really such a fast-paced world, what can we do? So how can we sloth down? I like it, yeah. So should we change ourselves or our environment? And I think that if you want to take something from this lecture, these are the next slides. It's not like it was, I hope, not boring thus far, but still there are some things that we should consider. So first of all, there's actually legislation. So there are already some initiatives that encourage slowing down. There are the 4 days work week initiatives. If you heard about them, they ask us to really slow down, work less. Another example is the medical interns in Israel. So in Israel, medical interns work for 26-hour shifts, and this is really terrible. It hurts them, it hurts the patients. So I'm involved in shortening their shift in this committee, and actually, hopefully in September, they're going to start and shorten their shifts. And there's also another thing. Have you heard about the ISO 45? Okay, so I advise you to Google it, not now, but. So their ISO is the International Standardization Organization, and it has these quality ISOs, this standardization, and now there's a new one that concerns psychosocial risks at work, and it tells us what we should do at work in order to keep employees safe, and fast-paced work is one of the things that they encourage us to reduce. Now, we cannot hold the external world, as accounted for our inability to slow at work, and again, there are studies that show, for example, the attention restoration theory. It suggests that exposure to natural environments can help restore attention and cognitive function. And in the context of work, taking breaks to go for a walk or even doing some of the drills that we had just done outside are great in nature. Okay, so this was in a botanic garden. It doesn't have to be in a botanic garden, but again, if we can do these present movement, not the future, not the past, to really slow down, it may help. another thing we can do is actually explore our own busyness. So think about the role busyness served in your own life, even as a child. Is it a habitual repetition of a role you played as a child? How do you want to relate to this pattern? Do you want to go on being so busy? So explore how and when your busyness started. Is it helpful? Is it an obstacle? So these are things we should ask ourselves, and also explore your slowness. So ask yourself such question as, what's been happening in your life leading up to times when you were able to slow down? Have you liked it? Did you like it? Or did you experience slowness only because you were too ill or too exhausted, and you don't want to get to that place again, so you don't slow down because it made you feel bad, right? So these are things that we may want to ask ourselves. And also the third thing, which is really important, is consider others. So think about the important people in your life, like your children, family, friends, spouse, and how does your busyness affect them? Ask them directly about how they experience your difficulty with slowing down at work. Okay? It may give you some new and interesting insights. And almost finally, remember that slowing down looks different for every person. So it's important to find out what works well for you. And the key is that slowing down connects you to yourself in a way that feels embodied and living. So it's different for each and every one of you. For some, it's dancing. For some, it's just standing still for 10 minutes, as we saw today. For others, like me, it's illustrating. So when I'm illustrating, I can sit for 6 hours straight. I don't get up, I don't eat, I do nothing. I just illustrate, very meditative. For others, it's yoga, no matter what, but find the things where you'll feel more, be able to feel more still. And with that, I'll conclude. May the sloth be with you. That's it. Thank you very much.